Hi, Peri.
Hi, how you going?
Yeah, good. I'm super excited for this interview. All right, for everyone who is watching this is Peri McIntosh, and she runs, let's see if I've got this right, the Border Kitchen, right? Border Park Kitchen. And you are cooking mentor for busy moms, right? So this topic got me super excited because I'm a little bit of a health food nut. I've done an educational track to become a hormone balance coach, and part of that is also learning about different foods and what they can do with your body. So when I came across what you did, I was just like, yes, all moms cook. All moms need to know more about how to make our lives easier with cooking. So welcome, Bree.
Absolutely.
And I would love it if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you ended up doing the work you're doing.
Sure. So my husband and I, we're organic farmers. So we grow wheat and rye. We also have sheep and cattle, but we live in a really dry area. And so to give you an idea about how dry it is, we say that we're just one thunderstorm away from being a desert. So from 2018 to 2020, we had a really severe drought. And not enough rain means not very much income, and it was hugely stressful for us.
Yeah.
And it rocked us really as a family. And most of this time, I was just getting by. I was doing as little as possible. Now, I've always loved cooking, but I lost my interest in it. I just, preparing meals felt like it was just a heavy load and it felt hard and there was no joy. I started to dread it. And I thought I need to find easy meals. I need to find things that are really quick to do. I need clever shortcuts. I need pre-prepared foods. I need little washing up, anything to make my job easier. And do you know what I discovered? Was that lowering the expectations that I had for myself and simplifying the meals and asking for help made a huge difference. So it slowly turned things around for me, and my enthusiasm for cooking returned. So I was sharing these stories of what I was doing with other mums, and they were saying, I feel just the same. Cooking feels hard. I'm sick of it. I don't want to do it anymore. But they also wanted to know what I'd done to change the way that I felt about cooking for our family. So, helping and encouraging people has always been part of my love language. And that's exactly what Border Park Kitchen is. So, I was just sharing what I experienced and what I learned from a season of burnout. And like we talked about before, the kitchen may not be a place where we feel relaxed or energized, but we do spend a lot of time there. So we need to find a way to make it as easy as possible. And that's why Border Park Kitchen exists.
Wow, so cool to hear some of your backstory that being an organic farmer. And wait, I know this about you, but you haven't told us how many kids do you have?
So we have 7 children. So
Right.
I have to cook a lot of food, a lot of time.
And I thought my life was busy with 3 kids, right? So being so farming life is also right, like pretty intense from what I've understood. And you went through like a pretty heavy period with the droughts. And really,
Mhm.
what I hear is then you got pushed really from your own need to be able to find that joy of being in the kitchen again without it being, like a heavy chore every single day.
Yeah,
And that you kind of transition, and I recognize this right from my own story, that from your own struggle and finding your way into doing it amazingly, and then all of a sudden other people being like, wait, what are you doing? To being able to, lowering your own expectations in the kitchen, making your life as easy as possible, like doing, working smarter instead of working harder is what I'm hearing you
definitely.
say.
Yep.
And I think that is just awesome. So I'm really excited to hear what kind of tips you're going
Mhm.
to give us today. So
Thank you.
I know I approached you because I work, with moms, and you do as
Hmm.
well. And having 7
Yep.
kids at home, like, whoa, I can't even imagine what that would be like doing meal prep. But tell me a little bit more about the kind of or what do moms typically come to you? You mentioned it already a little bit, right? With the meal prep, but a typical question maybe that you would get from a client who's coming to you looking for help.
Yeah, sure. So the mums that I work with, they're basically exhausted. They're overwhelmed. They're time poor. They've got so many different roles that they're juggling, and they're actually ready just to give cooking away. You know, if someone would take the job, they would happily give it up. But unfortunately, that's not usually a workable option. And so they're desperate just to find an easier way to cook for their families. And so these mums, they usually want three different things from me. They want easy, creative meal ideas, just to help them get out of a dinner rut, but they have to be really quick and easy, and they have to be able to just to come together really easily. They also want like a practical, efficient solution. So they want to know, you know, where should I buy this, or what's the best tool for this, or how am I going to do this easily? But they also want support and acknowledgement and accountability. So they want to know that they're not alone. They are not the only one who is feeling over it, and that they don't have to try and figure things out for themselves. So I focus really on 4 different areas. I focus on simplifying meals, eating wholesome foods, saving money, and also bespoke kitchen strategies. So one strategy does not fit all. And I really take that into consideration when I'm hearing from the different mums and making sure that it's individualized advice.
Oh, I really like that. That is so aligned with the way that I coach as well, right? That everyone starts in a different phase in their life at a different, you know, their kids are different ages, their home situation is different, whether they're working, staying at home, transitioning back to work, working part-time, having a business, working from home, like, you know, and the amount and the ages of the kids. I can imagine that all of that has such an impact on how your home is run, how your kitchen is run, right? Because let's face it, like your focus is really in the kitchen. And I have to say, the kitchen is one of my favorite places to be too, and I really involve the kids a lot in the cooking. So I have come across people, and I can imagine that maybe this is also something that you deal with. I've come across a range of people from, like, literally, I had a friend of mine when I was studying in Spain that did not know how to cook rice or boil potatoes, right? Things that for me, I knew were like such basic things. And I grew up with a mom, like I grew up on a boat. So we grew up with my mom cooking all the things, right? And we didn't always have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, but my mother was cooking every time. There was no such thing as takeout meals. And she had, you know, if you run out of stuff, you have to make do with what you have, because guess what? There's no store around, right? And I can imagine if you're living in more isolated areas where the store isn't close by, or you're working with limited means, you've got to get really creative in the kitchen. So absolutely. I love that pillar that you know, very clear with your 4 pillars. I think simplifying, saving money, bespoke, and I missed, what was the other one?
Yep, the other one was eating wholesome foods. So not necessarily, so like real foods. You know, I do see that there's a real time and a place for maybe having a jar of something, but that's not something I want to rely on, because I want to feel good when I eat food. And, you know, it affects my mood and all sorts of things, as well as, you know, growing bodies of our kids. So I really do focus on real foods.
Yeah, and I love this. The topic food. I brought this up in the Facebook group as well. Food is one of the topics that with my clients comes up all the time, right? Like usually it's how to make my kids eat this, and this, or this amount of this. But the way I approach it as well is, and there's research that's backed this up. You probably know this, but if we offer our kids a healthy variety of food, that they are able to self-regulate and get enough of all the right, you know, the vitamins and minerals and everything that they need in over a longer period of time. What the research didn't take into account is, and what I'm sure you're seeing as well with your clients, is that all the other stuff that we're now being inundated with, right? That's everywhere. All the packaged food, all the artificial stuff, the numbers, the extra added salts and sugars, and not to mention that we're biologically programmed to be like, yum, when that comes our way, right? And we can't stop eating it. All of that stuff, when we add that into the mix, it makes it much harder to make sure, and to, as a mom, I'm sure you've had this, the with your clients as well, the worry and the guilt, like, am I doing it good enough? And
yes,
the what we are surrounded with, our environment, has such a big impact on whether we are able to also trust ourselves in that. Because if it were, let's say, go back 50 years, right, that we didn't have as much access to all this packaged food and stuff, actually you could provide your kids a lot easier with a healthy variety of food and not need to worry about it as much. But now it's kind of on top of, all right, how do I do this? And what kind of variety do I get in there so that I don't get bored out of my mind with, spaghetti bolognese, like pasta, my kids call it pasta red sauce. They would eat that like every single night of the week, right? How do I get enough variety in there without adding too much of all the packaged and the artificial stuff, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
So I love this. I love this approach. Can you tell I get really excited about, yes, wholesome, because there are a lot of people out there who are like, and I jumped recently on another Facebook group because we're going traveling. So I want to know, more about healthy stuff that I can do quickly while I'm on the road, which is a whole different, ball game. Yep. But a lot of the stuff I saw was high in processed sugars, high in wheat. And look, I think you're the same way. Like, everyone's going to start from where they are. I don't judge people with how they eat. I share, and people, I don't know. Do you have this as well? That, like, we can give advice, but people have to kind of take what they want from it.
Yep, absolutely. And it's just acknowledging that it's not, you don't always have to be in that place. It can be just for a season, just to get you by, but recognizing that, choosing whole ingredients is always going to be better. It's going to be a win in every different way. So that's the sort of goal that we're trying to work towards, without adding any guilt to where we are now.
We don't need more guilt, let's face it, right? We are the guilt masters as mothers.
Yep. Yeah, and we put so much pressure on ourselves, and we see other mums who we feel like they're doing it really well, but truthfully, they're feeling just the same as us. So yeah, I guess we just have to do the best we can, and just encourage and share what we've learned with others.
Yeah, and social media has a big impact on that. I think it provides all the beautiful Instagram pictures of people's beautifully prepped food coming by. I think that's why I actually put a post up about, like, my super failed kitchen experiment the other day, because it was just, I was like, you have to see that it doesn't always go well. It is not always quick. It can be painful and horrible, and you can put tons of effort into it and your kids still won't eat it. Like, you never know this.
That's right. Yeah, and it doesn't have to look like Pinterest, like it's like, we have to be real. We have to be able to keep doing this day in, day out. We can't wear ourselves out by doing something amazing and then have no energy to turn around and do it again the next day. It's just not sustainable.
No, not at all. I totally agree with you. So tell me some of the things. Okay, you mentioned a little bit how the moms that you work with, they come to you, they're exhausted, they're burnt out from just trying to do it all, right? With everything in the kitchen. Tell me some of the results that, like, people would typically see after starting to work with you, right? And it doesn't, yes, you can say, woohoo, the golden end result, but you could say, like, what's the first shift that you see women starting to make in general, right? Because we've talked about how everyone is very, very different.
That's right. And I think that's probably just starting, like you mentioned before, starting to trust themselves, and also just to relax. There's so much pressure around everything we do, food included. And I think just allowing them to say, it's okay. Every meal doesn't have to look fantastic. everybody doesn't have to love this, but as long as we're eating something. And so I think just like what I learned, over the last couple of years, just lowering the expectations for ourselves, and that can just release so much, pressure from us. So that's one of the very simple but really important first steps to sort of making any progress. And also, I think just being confident that they don't have to cook every meal every day, that they either, can ask for help. You can have cereal for breakfast, you can have leftovers, it's okay. It doesn't have to look a certain way. It can be, crackers and cheese. As long as there's something to eat, and really we are very blessed in this in the countries that we live, that there isn't really a shortage of food. So it's not like we're going without. It's just sometimes over choice makes it difficult, and we tend to complicate that. So yeah, I think just really simplifying things is one of the big benefits that the mums get, and that they feel like they can learn some really efficient little time hacks and things to cut waste, cut costs, that they can come back to again and again, that actually don't take very much time or effort, but yield really big results.
I love it. Just talking to you, I'm having like so many things like being triggered, because this is one of something that's very close to me as well, right? Like providing healthy meals for my kids. And at the same time, I'm also very practical and realistic. So when you're saying like crackers and cheese, I was like, yes, I'm not the only one who's like giving my kids popcorn and salad for dinner sometimes. That's our go-to like relaxed, easy meal. Is I'll make my own popcorn. So I'm like, corn kernels, like with some oil in a pan, popcorn and salad. And that is like literally, that's my lazy meal that can take like 10-15 minutes. So I love that you're like, that, or quesadillas and salad, like anything in salad.
That's right.
And I'm lucky, like my kids also have learned to really love their veggies and eat it. But I was like, yes, crackers and cheese. We've done tapas evenings as well. Like the being okay with, I really resonate with that, right? That you don't have to cook every single night of the week. You don't have to slave for hours in the kitchen. Also the cutting down on waste. I think this is something I carry with me. If you've ever, this is going off on a totally different tangent. If you've ever looked into epigenetics, and that you can carry stuff with you from like 7 generations back. My background is that my grandparents left Germany right before World War II, and a lot of our family, ended up in the concentration camps there. So if you think about like, but not only that, the war generation, right? The war generation in general, like some people have this reaction to throwing away food that has nothing to do with now, right?
Yeah, no sane
It doesn't logically make any sense that this is I of course I think from a social responsibility level, like I've also like don't like wasting food. So I'm totally on board with like, yes, how can we figure out recipes that, for example, like you use half of something and then you plan in a meal for later in the after the week that uses the other half of that, so you're not throwing away. And I mean, I'm doing it for a family of 5, but you're doing it for like 9. So but I think indeed like finding out these kind of shortcuts, or I'm curious as well. What about meal planning? Is that part of what you do as well?
I do a little bit of that. I think that it's really covered well in other areas. What I feel like is, realistically, nobody needs more, I guess, new recipes or ideas about meal planning. They actually need the realistic day-to-day. So what happens when your meal plan fails, and or you haven't had the time to do what you were going to do? What do you do then? And so that's often where I focus. So just having a backup. What do you have? Your own quick meals collection that you can pull on? So like your popcorn and your salad. Everybody needs a handful of those really easy meals that not only you can prepare, that other people in your family can too, so that you can outsource, you can delegate that, and the job then doesn't just fall on you. So yeah, I do talk about those areas, but it's not something I feel like it's well addressed in other by other people.
Yeah.
I try and fill in the gaps that actually are talking real life, and not just being ideal.
Yeah, well, I asked because some meal planning is something that we do at home.
Yep.
Not in a let me fill out an Excel sheet with like all the meals for the coming month. It goes a little bit like too far for me. But we have a whiteboard downstairs, and then I'm also in this very luxurious position, and I'm gonna have to get used to this traveling. But we get our groceries delivered every week, so
Oh,
I
wow.
have to. And I've done this on purpose because going to the store with 3 small children is just I can do it. Yes. Will I come out necessarily happy and relaxed and without a bunch of extra crap in the shopping cart that I didn't want in the first place? I don't know. But and during everything with Corona, I got used to like not going to the store. So my kids are like, they get even more excited and like wound up from going to a store, period. So doing
Absolutely.
a week worth of
Anything to get
shopping.
out.
Yeah. So I try and limit my shopping moments as well to 1 moment a week. And I find that the meal planning just helps with only needing to go to the store once a week, instead of like here, it's very typical. And you'll literally see, I'm in the Netherlands. So you'll see rush hour at like between 5:30 and 6. It's a little less now because people are working at home, but literally rush hour at the supermarket, that people go to the supermarket at the end of the day, not having any idea of what they were planning to eat for that day, and spontaneously just going to the store. And there's a huge market here in ready-made meals, right? That are just, you literally grab them in the package and you throw them in the microwave. And my husband, he's definitely guilty of this. He's learned a lot about cooking since living with me, but it was very much made for the single person who comes from work and doesn't want to cook. And I think that's a totally different phase and totally different market. But some people carry that habit with them of I'm going to just grab something and throw it in the microwave, to try and again, when you were talking about expectations, I was like, oh man, expectations are just, they're so valid on everything, right? Like usually when we're talking about parenting and what I do as well, it's all about the expectations. What do I expect of my kids? What I expect of what they can communicate, will communicate, how they will act places. But the expectation of what I'm doing, as far as cooking wise, also the expectation of what my kids are going to eat or not eat.
Yes.
That's just a huge one. I love it. What I wanted to come back to was, I think, a very important point that you touched on, which was asking for help, right? I love that you bring that in, because I think that that's one of the things that not only people in general have a little bit of an issue with, but women and mothers, like for some reason, we have this thing that we have to be able to do it ourselves. And if we don't do it ourselves, then we must be a failure.
We're a failure. Yeah. And because we look at other people's highlight reels and we see them doing it all well for a snippet of time, we then extrapolate that and feel like that happens all the time, and that we're the only ones who are failing and can't do it. So yeah, I definitely think there's something inbuilt in us that feels like, yes, we do need to nurture our families, but that we're trying to do it all ourselves all of the time, and it's just not sustainable.
No. So what is one of the ways that you would then encourage people to ask for help, right? Like, so there's, when we're talking about help, and I heard you say was like, make things easy, like have your set of recipes that you go to, and make sure that, what I hear you saying, actually, what I'm not sure is, correct me if I'm wrong, right, is that there's systems in place that someone else can jump in your kitchen, quote unquote, right? It's not the, it's not the women's. My husband's very comfortable in the kitchen. In fact, he cooked yesterday, and he makes an amazing, this is one of ours, one pot Indian dal. So it's like a like curry soup thing. And we have a pressure cooker that's electric. I'm going to miss that one too. But you throw everything in it, and then you use you just blend it, and it's like food for multiple days. But anyway, how would you say, like, hey, here's the first step that you can start asking for help, or there's two questions, right? How can you ask for help, and how can you set your kitchen up so that someone can help you?
Yeah, sure. So I think it really depends on what age your kids are.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you've got really young kids, they're not going to be able to do things unassisted. You still have to be there. And so things, yeah, that does take longer, showing them how to wash the lettuce or cut the carrots or whatever it is. So that's not going to be as easy, but it doesn't mean that there isn't a way that you can ask for help. So you can ask your husband, you can ask, and obviously that's not quite as possible at the moment, but you could ask, a neighbor or a good friend who could help. Or you can also, for a short season of your life, rely more on like a bought bag of, salad leaves or whatever, so that you're not having to do everything yourself. So asking for help doesn't necessarily mean another person. It could be, like a convenience type of pre-prepared food. It could also be a tool. So it might be that if you go through a stack of grated cheese, and we don't buy grated cheese, so I have a food processor. And so that's sort of getting help, outside help. I guess if you have got older kids, it is really fantastic to try and involve them in the kitchen, and just giving them, I guess, a sense of responsibility, but also that you're really appreciative of them helping you. So, they don't have to be big things, but just, I guess, trying to do it as a team effort is really good. The other thing is there are also other services. So, if you've just had a baby or you're recovering, so there are, I forget what the name is here in Australia. You actually provide all the ingredients, but there are people that you can pay to come in and cook your food, and they'll do a certain number of meals for you. So that's fantastic. I think it's called I Hate Cooking. So, there's that sort of service as well. So it really depends. I mean, you have to look at what your circumstance is, but don't be afraid to ask. The other thing is that if you make a, double of something, maybe you can share it with someone and swap it, and they've made double of something else. So you're getting help, but not necessarily in your kitchen. It could be a grandparent. There's lots of different ways for doing that. So we talk about all sorts of options.
Well, I think that's really great. You've touched on, like, something I think is very important. It's being creative. It's looking at your situation and thinking a little bit outside the box. And, obviously you're in Australia, so you have different things available to you, but this could apply to wherever you are in the world, to look around to see, hey, what kind of services are there, right? Because you mentioned someone that comes to your house and cooks with what you've got. I was like, man, that's awesome. Why don't I have that? But here, what you have is like services. I think HelloFresh is one of them, and now the supermarkets have picked back up on that, where they'll bring you just meals with recipes on it, so you get it delivered, right? So that's also another way of help. But I love how you framed it, because I have never actually thought of the asking for help as using your kitchen appliances, right? Because I realized that indeed I have a couple of kitchen appliances that I'm really going to miss when we're on the road, because I've learned to rely on them. Like the food processor is definitely one of those, right? Like I make super healthy, like date balls for my kids, as healthy sweet snacks for them. But I'm like, how the heck am I going to make that if I don't have my food processor when I'm on the road? So those, and the same with the, the processor, the hand processor.
Blender. Yes.
The blender. Blender is another one. I make fruit. We make fruit smoothies, and then the kids have homemade ice cream that they can eat, at any moment of the day. What I love is that you're framing it differently. You're saying, hey, be creative. Look at what your household is, and you're adding things to it, because maybe someone doesn't have a food processor, right? Well, the grated cheese in a food processor. I love that you say that, because that for me is also like, I know a lot about this. I love this, because I know a lot about food and cooking, and I'm in the kitchen a lot. And still there are things like this that for me, I'm like, I've never thought of putting cheese in the food processor before. Right. So brilliant, because I can see immediately how what you're the kind of coaching you're doing or the mentoring you're doing would have such an immediate impact in someone's like daily life. Because I mean, we eat a lot of processed food, but cheese is, I could live with being a vegetarian, I think. And I've definitely gone away from certain kinds of meat, and I've had periods where I'm a vegetarian. My mom's a vegetarian, right? We have accidentally several meals in our easy cookbook stuff that are vegan even. But I always say to people, I'm like, I don't know if I could ever be vegan because I just love cheese so much.
You and so many other people. It just, cheese makes things great. It tastes great.
Well, one of the other things, yes, cheese, yes. And my kids love cheese, which brings me back to the other thing that I really love that you mentioned was making it a team effort, right? That it's indeed the age of your kids is a little dependent on in how far you can involve them in the kitchen. But what I love that you touched on is it's not an option, right? There's so many people that, and I've heard from clients of mine that the one, their kids get their screen time while the parent is cooking. And as much as I definitely have been guilty of that myself, right? And now we've gone to no screen, so that's a different topic for a different day. The fact is you're literally shutting your child out of the cooking process and getting them in the habit of not being involved in that. And
that they're on the receiving end of the food all the time, and that they don't see it, they don't get the choice, they don't get to experience all of that. It's really sad. It means they miss out and you miss out.
Yeah, and I set up a foundation, and I'm gonna actually dissolve it because it's just everything with being at home. I haven't been able to do things in person enough with everything, but I gave cooking lessons for parents with their kids, because most of the activities that we find are either for parents or for kids. And I felt like a lot of the resistance exactly to this, to getting your kids involved in the kitchen, is just my young child with a knife, or, like it's going to take 3 times as long, which, by the way, let's be honest, it does take longer. It's not more efficient having your child in the kitchen at first, right?
Not now, not straight away.
Exactly. I was like, this is exactly it. This is the long-term thinking, because what we're doing, and I think that you've touched on it, maybe we haven't explicitly talked about it yet, but the underlying foundations that we're laying are enjoyment of being in the kitchen, enjoyment of food, enjoying being involved in the process, right? That friend that I told you about that literally didn't know how to boil potatoes or cook rice, right? That's because that I'm, and I didn't dive into her, I was in college and we were living in Madrid, right? So I didn't ask her about her, her background and why she didn't know this stuff. But I can imagine that she was never involved in the kitchen when she was a kid. And that has so much to do with how you approach food and food prep in the future.
Yep. And your confidence and your willingness to sort of try new things, and just to feel like, that it's worth your time doing it.
Yeah, really, that
so
is
much.
Yeah, and again, it's that long-term thinking, right? It's the doing things a step at a time that are leading our kids to somewhere. It's like, okay, maybe we're not going to have a fully cohesive teamwork flowing kitchen right now. What we're doing is making the first steps to it. And this touches on something that I'm also very passionate about. I'm passionate about a lot of things, but habit forming, right? Like, and also, I don't know if you've read the book Atomic Habits.
I love that book. Yes. Going through it. Third time, I think.
Third time, right? It's something that you can keep getting golden nuggets out of it. But it's exactly that concept that I can see you're applying, is these incremental changes. So not trying to then, go from, hot mess to everything's going brilliantly in the kitchen all the time, but to take those steps one step at a time, incremental changes, get that in your system, make it a habit. So that over the long term, will make a huge difference in your life.
Absolutely. Yep. And you'll be able to look back and think, wow, that you've come so far. It's great.
Yeah. All right. I'm loving this. This is going I'm getting so much gold out of this, and I'm like seeing how relevant it is. So I hope that whoever is watching this is also like getting super inspired to start going in the kitchen and to being with their, being with their kids in the kitchen, and I heard you say it's a little bit age dependent. What is for you typically? I'm just curious, right? Like, at what age did you involve your kids in the kitchen, and what do you see happening with your clients?
Basically, our kids have always been in the kitchen because I do love food, and I also like them to feel like they're involved and that they've got a place and a role there. So ours were very young, down to, I think one of our girls was, I think she was 9 months old, and we were peeling potatoes, and instead of using a peeler, she was peeling with her teeth. So, there's, probably not not too much younger than 9 months, but anyway, yeah. So really for all the way through. So we made sure that we've got the, like a stool for them to be safe on, that we've got, a knife that they can use safely. And we're always sort of, I guess, reminding them of safety, whether it's around hot foods, whether it's a hot oven or hot water, or, knives not being too close to the edge of the bench or that sort of thing. But also then just showing them ways, but then letting them do that, and then taking ownership, and then remembering to circle back around when we're actually serving that meal and eating that, and saying, thanks to Jane because she cut the carrots, and, aren't they great? And thanks for someone else because they made a salad dressing or whatever it is. So just remembering that they love that recognition. So yeah, that's what we've done.
Yeah, that what I hear is that they were helping, that they were recognizing that everyone was a part of the meal creation process.
That's right. They were
and
all
that everything they
contributing.
did, every little bit was a help towards the meal. I really love that. Thank you for that one. That's it's a nice one. We express gratitude, but I think I can, see, I'm getting my golden nuggets from this too. So it's fantastic that I can explicitly, say, like, the other day when Dylan he was putting the noodles in the lasagna, right? Like, for the awesome layering skills, right?
That's right. Yeah. And there's so much that they can learn from being in the kitchen, and it's really good for a relationship, between you and your children. And it's not to say that there are some days that you would rather just do it by yourself. And, I know that there are some days I say, okay, I'm doing this by myself, and I'm happy to do that because I don't have the time or the patience to do it. But when you're able to, and even if it's just a small element, it doesn't have to be the whole meal. But one other quick tip that I would suggest in there is that not long ago I realised that I would ask our children to do the first half of some of those tasks, but I didn't ever remember to get them to do the next bit. So they knew how to do up to a certain point, and then I would take on. And so I've now tried to switch it up so that I do the first bit and then they do the next bit. So, for example, if we're doing roast potatoes or something, they would peel and cut and get ready, and then I would do the next bit. But yeah, just getting them to then put them on the tray and do the seasonings, know how to put them in the oven safely, and those things.
That's a really good one that I hadn't also thought about before, because that's really playing into kids' natural attention spans, right? Like, we cannot, again, talking about expectations, we can't expect them to be, for a half an hour in the kitchen with us going through that whole process. They have a short attention span. So I like that you're saying, okay, you could also do this, I imagine, with different kids, that the one jumps in for the first part of the process and one at the last part of the process, but to be aware that we're allowing them to be with us in the whole process, so that they, of course, then can mentally, because we also learn a lot by doing, right? So that they then can save that as a memory of, I know how to do this whole process myself.
That's right. And it gives them confidence, and means that, yes, even if they haven't done it a lot of times, they've at least seen it and experienced it. So yeah.
Nice. No, I love that as a tip. You've given us a lot of tips already, right? Where would you then, I think, go with, like, if there were your one golden tip to rule them all, right? If you're thinking like Frodo, Lord of the Rings, your one golden tip to rule them all, what would be the one that you would say, like, hey, if you don't do anything else in the kitchen, like, this one thing will help you enormously?
Sure. Yep. So for me, time and time again, I hear and I know for myself that deciding what for dinner is the number one stress. So my big recommendation is don't wait until it's 5 o'clock to decide what you're having for dinner. Waiting until the last minute is never going to make it easier. It's always better to decide earlier. We don't make logical decisions right at the last minute. So the way that I do this is I actually make myself a commitment every day. So what I do is, even if I'm following a meal plan or if I'm not, I say to myself, by whatever time of day, I'm going to know what is for dinner. So say, for example, for me, I say by 9 o'clock every day, I will know what's for dinner. So as long as it allows you enough time to defrost the meat, or, to prep ahead if you need to, it doesn't matter what time it is, but just choose a time and say, by this time, I'm making a commitment. I will know what I'm having for dinner. And the other thing is that it's not a rule and it's not an obligation. It's not a heavy thing. It's like you're making a promise to a friend and you're saying, I'm going to agree to doing this every day, and it's going to make your life easier, but it's not a heavy thing. So yeah, that's my big tip. Don't wait until the end of the day to decide what you're having for dinner.
Yeah, I think that is so valuable. This is one of those perfect examples of a little thing that can make such a big difference for you, especially if you're thinking like, hey, you're saying 9 o'clock. I'm guessing 9 o'clock in the morning. That at 9 o'clock in the morning, you know what you're going to eat for the day, because you know what that allows you to do is to just have a peek in the cabinets. Do you have everything that you need? And if not, then you can imagine, like, you don't necessarily have to go to the store, but you could think, hey, what's an alternative then? And then you can decide, oh, how long is this going to the food cooking process going to take? And it can allow you to indeed totally set yourself up for success, instead of at 5:30 dealing with hangry children and a more chaotic kitchen environment, which can lead to a lot more frustration and things going wrong. So I love this golden tip. So just so but I will know by whatever time that works for you what I'm going to eat this evening.
And even if you feel like you're following a meal plan, just look on it and confirm, because sometimes if it says a certain meal and you're not going to eat that, decide then, am I going to follow this, or am I going to choose something else, or have things changed? Are we going out for dinner, or whatever it is? But just make sure that you're really committed to whatever choice you've made.
Yeah, I love this, because it's also just, again, the setting yourself up for success is sometimes we'll have, when we buy things, we have something in the freezer, right? Like either a leftover meal from the freezer or something that needs to be taken out. So again, you're not realizing at the end of the day, oh, I was going to make lasagna and the meat is still in the freezer, right? Like, and then having to use the microwave, which I try and also avoid it as much as possible, right? So it's just taking away all those last minute kind of panic things, which also I could, when we're dealing with housefuls of kids, there's already enough going on and enough unexpected stuff to make our kitchen life a little bit more relaxed. I love it.
And I think, just going throughout the day, doesn't matter what else you're doing. It just gives you a sense of, I guess, calm and peace that you've made a decision, and that, it's one less thing to worry about and just have hanging over you. So it does amazing things for your brain. I can tell you that's true.
Yeah, no, I can totally imagine what's coming up for me right now, as I realize that we've kind of been, I've been assuming, but maybe this, correct me if I'm wrong, we're mostly talking about the evening meal prep, right? Like at the end of the day. But do you do this, because you're saying at 9 o'clock, knowing what you're going to eat in the evening, but what about those other meals of the day, right? The meals and the snacks, or like kids' school lunches, right? Like, you don't work with the meal planning, but how do you approach like the rest of the day?
So I actually make different times throughout the day, so I know, by 9 o'clock in the morning I know what we're having for dinner. But the night before, I know what we're having I make a decision before I go to bed. I make a decision about what we're having for breakfast. So I either prep it then, or I at least know so that when I get up, I can, start getting it ready. Sometimes it's just the same thing, it might be just a homemade muesli. Sometimes it might be an oatmeal bake, or it might be sourdough pancakes, or whatever it is, but I know before. And the same with lunch boxes. I know, the night before. So I'm giving myself a good stretch of time before it actually happens, to make it, make that decision.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. I love it. Like I'm already thinking about like, oh yes, I'm gonna like decide tonight and like I'm also about these quick, easy hacks. So like I know that when you decide to implement a new habit, that sometimes it's hard to remember these things. So I was already thinking like one of the things that works for me, for example, is I set alarms in my phone. So my alarm will go off with, you need to do this for the next day. I did this because one time I missed my grocery order deadline, and we pay for groceries to be delivered, but you have to deliver them by a certain time. And so I missed it. And because of that, now I have an alarm that goes off every single week the night before, because it's a freaking 6 a.m. deadline. I don't know why, but I have an alarm now that says to finalize the grocery order so that I don't miss that deadline. So I can imagine that when we're getting into the routine of doing that you have like an alarm that could go off that says, hey, plan breakfast, plan lunch.
Yep. And I do sometimes do alarms, but I also like to tie it to another habit that I'm already doing. So a bit along the atomic habits
habit stacking.
So I'm stacking that with, so while I'm eating breakfast, I'm thinking about dinner, like while I'm having my, evening cuppa, I'm thinking about breakfast. So it just becomes, habit. But setting alarm is just as good.
Yeah, no, but so again, a different strategy, because alarm may just not work for some people. So I like that. Indeed, you're always going to have your cup. This is the habit stacking thing, right? Like you're always going to have your cup of tea every night. So when I sit down to have my cup of tea, I will plan what's going to happen for breakfast in the morning.
Yes, awesome. Definitely.
Oh, this has just been like so much fun. Okay, if we were going to say that a mom out there is like, I love what you're doing, but I want to read about this myself. What is a resource that you would recommend, or an online site, a book, a magazine, whatever? What is the first place you were saying like, hey, if you want to start learning more about this topic of making your food easier, because there is so much out there when it comes to food and meal prep and making life easier as a family. What is a resource you would recommend?
Yep, sure. So it's actually not one of my resources. It's a book that I absolutely love, and I think she's got some really good principles. It's called The Lazy Genius Way. I don't know whether you've seen it. Her name is Kendra Adachi, and basically she's talking about embracing what matters, ditching what doesn't, and getting stuff done. So she's got 13 really what she calls lazy genius principles. And it's a lot of the things that I do are based on those principles. So it's really just, it's a freedom way of living, but also recognizing that, there are benefits of having routines, but working out what is important to me. I will make that a priority. What isn't, I'm just going to leave, and I'm not going to stress about it. So I love that book. And the other really quick thing is, if you wanted something fun to do, there's a quiz, and it's called What's Your Cooking Personality? And it's by a group called How Stuff Works. And it's just a really fun quiz that describes the type of cook that you are based on the ingredients that you use and the cooking methods that you do. And it's just a bit of fun. So
I wrote that one down. Everyone loves a good quiz, right? Like I'm immediately thinking like, ooh, what is my cooking personality, right? I love this, Peri.
Two different resources.
Fantastic. Hey, this has been like so much fun. I'm really excited to just continue building our relationship and talking. I love these resources you offered. I've written them down, right? The Lazy Genius and What's Your Cooking Personality. And great that you've given us resources from others. Now, if people who are watching this interview want to find you and find more about what you do, where can we find you?
Sure. So I either hang out on Instagram or Facebook, so Border Park Kitchen. And I also have a free Facebook group, which is called Easy Healthy Family Meals. So I often do free trainings in there and give extra, I guess, tips and tricks in that group. Yeah, so they're the best places to catch me.
Fantastic. I'm super excited. So on what's your handle on Instagram?
It's Border Park Kitchen.
Border Park Kitchen and Easy Healthy Family Meals?
Meals.
Got it.
Meals.
All right.
Yep.
So that's how we can find Peri. I will, by the way, Peri, when I'm putting this interview up or whenever I'm sending it out, I will attach that information so people can find you, because I think this is, this is one of those essential things that we need to really get down. Well, we don't need to, right? Everything is a possibility, but I think it's one of those things that has the potential to make our lives as moms just so much more relaxed, easier, and enjoyable. So thank
Definitely,
you
because,
so much.
That's right.
Thank you so much
you.
for popping on today. And I am looking forward to sharing this interview. Any last words of wisdom? Otherwise, we're going to round off.
Yeah, sure. I think just remembering that cooking is not really like a sprint. It's more like a marathon. So just, I guess, taking an easy approach to it, making it simple and making sure that what you're doing is working. And if it's not, then reach out for help. Yeah, enjoy cooking and feeding your families.
All right, Peri. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.